Kris, what stood out to you about Eddie?
He's obviously a player that we saw a lot of this year, especially on the international front. Um, the one we have a question at the combine. We always ask teammates if you're able to take, one or two teammates with you to the NHL, who would you take? And it was unanimous that Eddie was everyone. Most of the guys on the Swedish team were saying they wanted to play with Eddie, and I think he's a big, strong kid. He can really skate. He's physical on the forecheck. A guy that is really tough to play against, and we just really liked the intensity that he's able to bring.
It sounds like, some of the same things that were said about Carter as far as tenacity and willpower and such. How important is that in what you see in the picks?
Well, I actually just enjoyed watching the last couple months of playoff hockey. And I think the one thing that really sticks out is how hard it there is to play, that compete. You look at the teams that were able to be successful and go on a run. Obviously, had guys that could skate. They had guys that were hard to play against. They had responsible hockey players, and we think that that's what Eddie's going to bring, for us. On another note, obviously he's going to play in Timra, where Henrik Zetterberg played, and Henrik gave him a text just to obviously welcome him to the Detroit Red Wings, and Eddie was just very fired up. So we had our secret agent over in Sweden working for us as well. So Henrik was he was happy with the pick as well. So that's good to know on this side of the pond. But for it's just we want to continue to draft and bring in prospects that that can skate, that can think the game, that are competitive and be tough players to play against. 200 complete hockey players, and that's when we made that selection, that's what we were thinking.
And there's always so much excitement right after the draft and such. How tough is it now to have to be like, okay, and now you got to give them time to develop and such, and it'll be. I mean, is that kind of tough to transition to that, or know that that's what's next?
Yeah, I mean, you know that that's what's next. Obviously, we're very excited to have all our prospects travel in tomorrow. We're going to have our development camp down at Little Caesars Arena. Bringing in players from the last couple of drafts, and just really just bring them in, and it's going to be educational purpose for all of them. But it'll be a great opportunity for us to see us, and even more importantly for them to see the facilities that we have to offer. Obviously, to bring them into the Little Caesars Arena and just kind of walk around and to be able to see, kind of a very special year, obviously, that these kids are being selected, and it's the 100th anniversary of the Detroit Red Wings. So the history is incredible. So, we know we have to be patient. Stevie's obviously touched on that as well. And as an organization, that's what we have to do. We want these young players, to be chomping at the bit and doing everything they can to make a push for the Detroit Red Wings. Is it going to happen next year for these guys? Probably not. But down the road, with the great development staff that we have with Dan Cleary and Nicholas Cronwall, they're going to work hard and challenge these young prospects and give them every resources they can to become prospects and potentially players for the Detroit Red Wings.
Great. Thank you, Kris.
You're welcome.
Max?
Hey, Kris, what stood out to you about Sverchek?
You know what? We had a lot of talk about him, in our draft room over there. And I think, the thing that we really like, and, probably going to hear this a lot, is, the fact of, the skating, the compete, obviously, the puck skills that he has. He plays a lot bigger than he is. And we just kind of talking, he's obviously a Slovak playing in Sweden. So we had some pretty good intel from our obviously our Czech scout, and obviously with Håkan Anderson and Thomas Carlson as well. So as we were sitting there, and you kind of sit there and you talk about names and you talk about players, this was the guy that we decided to go with, and obviously very excited to have him.
And then you took a couple of high school kids, and I just wonder, like, when you're scouting that level, what are the different things you kind of have to keep in mind? It's such a kind of different level from a lot of the other leagues that you scout.
Well, I think you just have to realize, on projection, obviously, playing in, New England Prep or Minnesota High School or Minnesota Elite League. It's obviously a different level of competition, but that's where they're at right now. And for us, it's we're looking at these players. Is it 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road? That's a possibility. So that's kind of what we keep in mind. And obviously we have to give these players a longer runway. But we with Graydon, he's going into play in Moncton next year, and we have great relationship with the head coach and the general manager of the Moncton Wildcats with Dan Cleary and Corey Crocker, our Quebec Maritime scouts. So they're very excited to get him into Moncton, and Gardner's done a tremendous job developing hockey players, so that's obviously exciting. Brent was able to see him play high school hockey as well as in the USHL. He obviously played some games in the USHL. So the one thing that certainly stood out for us right away is the release, the way he shoots the puck. He's got very good offensive zone instincts, and just kind of act for scoring. Kind of the way he shoots the puck at the level he plays. It's natural, and that's something that we were excited about to add.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Hey, Kris. Steve always says that you guys draft and not concerning yourself about position, but is that true with goalies as well? I mean, you guys have really kind of loaded up and on goalies. Can you get too many, or do you just figure, it sort itself out over time?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's just going to sort itself out over time, obviously. Now I think with the CHL rule and NCAA, I think it really opens things up to, a longer runway and more of an opportunity that, these, young prospects can play, whether it's, playing in the USHL or playing major junior and still have the opportunity at 19 or 20 years old, to go into school. So I thought it just kind of gives you, a longer time and more of a development plan with these goalies. So, when we were sitting there and we were talking about it, and we wanted to draft a goalie and continue, to draft, goalies and bring them into the prospect pool. Obviously Michael Prodl was someone that we saw a lot of. We love his size, we love his athleticism, and he's obviously right now, in Tri-Cities, has an opportunity down the road to go to school, and that's something that I think you're excited about with any prospect to have the ability from either going USHL, does he want to play in the CHL, does he, before he goes to school. I think that's something that has opened up for these young players and a tremendous opportunity for them.
And could you tell me a little bit about the Russian kid you drafted later in the draft?
Yeah, so all I've seen is on video. Nikolai Vakarov, our Russian scout, was obviously here today, and as we were discussing players, his name came up, and the one thing that Nikolai kept talking about was what a great playoff that he had. Good skater, good hockey sense, good with the puck, good first pass defenseman. And when you're sitting there and you have kind of when you're in the later rounds and you have one of the area scouts that is excited about a player, that's what I want to hear. And Nikolai, when we talked about it, kind of said he'd really like to draft him and bring him into the Detroit Red Wings prospect pool. And in the end, that's why we ended up making that decision.
Thanks, Kris.
Thank you.
Sean?
Kris, actually, kind of a follow-up for you based off an answer Steve gave us on. He told us that Phil O'Sear is leaving your organization after this. Is just kind of quick, kind of clarifying. Was he still in the room today, helping you draft goalies today as things went along?
Yes, he was. Yeah, both Phil O'Sear and Peter Yaros, our European goaltending scout, were both in the room. Yeah, gave tremendous input for us, and Phil obviously put a lot of miles in the air and on the road, this year, doing his job and doing a great job for us. And he wanted to see this right through. And obviously we wanted him to be a part of this draft as well.
And then when it comes to, I'm kind of curious, as this is year one of, we've got the things that we're opening up for next year with the players going CHL to college and everything like that. How does that kind of monitor and as you try to evaluate players in that, how does that kind of come into the calculus now for next year as you start to build towards next season?
As in drafting players?
Yeah, just like when it comes to play, like there's some players who are now maybe been CHL kids at 16, 17 who maybe now go to college. It's like as you're trying to get the best read on these players, how does that kind of impact now with those rule changes for you as in your role?
Well, like I said, it just gives us, an opportunity to be, more patient with these players. Gives them, some of these, young prospects at 17, 18 years old, physically they need time. And I think, with the opportunity, not only, if it's, the USHL kids, that were going to play either 1 or 2 years in the USHL and then go to school, now all of a sudden, it kind of gives them a little bit longer, opportunity to develop. And I think that that's something really important for them. And really, they get to touch, hockey at all different levels. You have an opportunity to play in the USHL, which is obviously a different league than, the CHL. Then you have an opportunity to play in the CHL. And then, if desired, an opportunity to go play in college hockey. And then once you get in college hockey, as you could be playing against some players that are 24, 25 years old. You're playing, you're still, 19 years old, maybe you're 20 years old, maybe, and you're playing against men. And you have an opportunity of obviously playing 2 games a week. You have an opportunity to get in the gym, an opportunity to work on things that you need to, and just, kind of, let, Mother Nature, take over on, some of these underdeveloped bodies. And I think that that's something that's really important. All these kids that we talk to, they talk about, oh, I got to put weight on, I have to put weight on, I have to do this. But in the end, it's going to happen over time, and we just have to be patient with it. And I'll just give you a perfect example with Carter Mazer. I think he was, 165 when we drafted him, and he's weighing in over at Little Caesars at almost 195 pounds right now. And he's an '02 birth, so he's 23 years old, and he's finally been able to put all that weight on, and he's putting on the right weight, and it's something that he knows he needed to do, and it's something that we just told him, like, it's going to happen, but you just have to be patient. And some kids are, just it takes a little bit longer, and I saw it with my own son, 180 pounds he might have been. He's, weighed in at 210 pounds at Little Caesars Arena, and he's the same age as Carter, '02, and that's what happens. It just kind of takes time, and now with the opportunity to, like I said, with the opportunity to play in different leagues at different times in their young career, and then still have the opportunity to go into college hockey and continue to develop, I think it's huge for these young players.
Awesome. Thank you, Kris.
Ed?
Hey, Kris, how important, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but that development camp next week, how important is that for you guys? I mean, do you have to remind these kids, look, it's not an evaluation or anything like that. We just want to teach you guys, basically.
Exactly, like I said, obviously very biased with our player development with Dan Cleary and Nicholas Cronwall, an incredible job that they do. But from everything from our sports science department to our trainers, our medical staff, our nutritionalists, we just want to. It's a crash course in as much information as we can give these guys, and that's what we're doing. We want them to. Obviously, the importance of training, it's something that, we put a big emphasis on for a lot of us that, played and are still, in the organization. That was something that meant a lot to all of us when we played. So we want to let them know the importance of training and obviously training properly and training at the right time. And with that said, you have to eat at the right time, know what to eat, know when to eat, I think is also very important. And then even on top of that, with the sleep, it's probably something, that a lot of these young players take for granted. But there's so much that we want to offer them. There's so much information out there, and we think that we do a real good job in educating, all these young players and give them something and be able to take it home over the summer, whether it's, training, whether it's nutrition, etc. We want to give them as much information as possible. And the one thing that we have a tremendous, for these young players is the open lines of communication, and whatever they need at any time, just pick up the phone and call us.
The last one, the decentralized draft this weekend. In your role, did that have an impact? Did that change things, or how did it go for you guys as far as your department and all that?
You know what? I liked it. It was obviously, it was a little bit on the longer side. I'd say yes. Is there ways that they could clean it up? I believe so, but for me, I enjoyed it. And the reason why I enjoyed it is as we were getting ready to make our pick, instead of, a scout coming up and coming over to me on the draft table when you had a drone or a camera sitting over there and, try to start talking about a player, like legit, we just kind of were able to throw names out. On top of that, analytically, we were able to have stuff up on screens. We had monitors all set up, which is obviously a huge advantage of something that you can't do in an in-person draft. So I thought it was great. I spent enough time on the road and to be able to do something like we did last night in the first round and head home and be able to get up in the morning and get a workout in and come back down here and do this rounds 2 through 7 was a huge advantage. So for me, being able to do it in my hometown and in the city is something that I enjoyed. And for our staff, we liked that you were able to have so much communication and not worried about what was going on in the surroundings around you.
Good stuff. Thanks, Kris.
Thanks, guys.
Answer.
Yeah, hi, Kris. Could you provide just a quick synopsis of what appealed to you of 3 guys that you haven't touched on yet, Solomon, Murphy, and Palmer?
Yeah, so with Solomon, he's a right shot natural goal scorer with obviously a very good release. He played high school hockey in Minnesota. Got an opportunity to play some hockey in the USHL. He's going to play there next year as well. We just like the ability to score goals. He did it very well at the high school level. He got off to actually a really hot start too in the USHL, which was something that you like to see. Someone going from Minnesota high school to jumping into the USHL and still being an offensive threat. So that was something that we liked. And what was the next name?
Murphy.
Yeah, Murphy playing out in the Maritimes. Big stay-at-home defenseman. The physicality and toughness. It's something that we felt at the time with where we were at. We wanted to bring it into the organization. Our Quebec scout Ross and Corey in the Maritimes. Really knew this player. He's a character kid. He's the type of teammate that will do everything he can to stick up for his teammates. And like I said, a big stay-at-home defensive defenseman. And then the third name,
Palmer.
Palmer, yeah. So he, touched on him. He's going to play in Moncton. Played New England Prep. Obviously, our New England Prep scout, Brendan was, like we said, when we're at this, point in the draft. For me, the excitement is when somebody in the area gets excited about a prospect, that is there, and this is exactly what happened. So we know the coach and the general manager, obviously Gardner McDougall, who took Moncton to the Memorial Cup, and our organization has a good relationship with Gardner, and he does an unreal job. He's done a great job, obviously in university hockey in Canada. Any team Canada's he's been a part of, he's been successful, and obviously put himself on a great run with Moncton. And we feel we're giving him, a prospect that he can develop. And he's a solid kid, thick build, competitive kid that can really skate. I think that's something that was intriguing for us. The way he plays the game and the intensity that he plays the game with. So in the end, when we're sitting there and we start debating on a lot of these picks and where we're at, obviously myself and Jesse and Hawken, know these players. But as you start getting in the later round, the excitement is when, an area scout steps up and wants to bring, a prospect from their area into the Detroit Red Wing prospect pool. And that's exactly what happened. So it's great for me, great to hear and excited to make the picks.
Thanks, Kris.
Thank you.
All right, we've got 2 more. We'll go to Bob Duff first and then Millsy last.
Hey, Kris, just a follow-up on Robertson Palmer. I'm researching him today. A lot of people talk about his character and his leadership. A lot of his teammates talked about what a great leader he was. So I just wondered, was that an element in why you wanted to take him?
Plays right into it for sure. I think, anytime that you have a teammate that, is going to go out of their way to say positive things about you, it's these are the type of guys that you want to be around. But, like I said, I think when you kind of start getting in the later rounds, we talk about the importance of the development path. And I think, it's interesting. We're sitting there and we're talking about this player. And, right away we find out, obviously, that he's going to play in Moncton. And then knowing the coaches and knowing the way, the way he develops players, you kind of get excited about that. So now he's got an opportunity coming from New England Prep School and going into playing in the Quebec Major Junior League and playing on, obviously a team that went to the Memorial Cup. Of course, they're going to make some changes. And, the one thing that we really know is he's going to be playing for, a great teammate and a great leader in Caleb Denoyer, and that's something that's obviously very exciting. Anytime you can put a character kid and a kid that's, is complimented because of his leadership skills and the way the kid skates and the way the kid competes, and then you put him around, a player that was a top 5 pick. You hope that that's going to, rub off. So we really like the path, and obviously, and then on top of that, the character that he brings, the intensity and the skating ability.
Thanks, Kris.
Thank you.
Milsey?
Drapes, I know that after the draft, now that the draft is done, I'm sure you and your staff have a little bit of a breather, but I guess what does the next step and direction for you and the group look like in terms of development process and preparing for future drafts?
Yeah. For us, you kind of take a little bit of an exhale right now. I'm lucky to be, a part of it, coming up with free agency and obviously on the pro side. So I'll still be down at Little Caesars Arena probably for the next week. Just be a part of that, whatever's going to go on. If there's a trade, obviously, if it's going to be a trade with younger prospects, to be involved on that side of it. That's obviously, the department that I know best. And then be able to sit in and just like Stevie talked about, if there's a fit for the team, to be able to do that. And then obviously with bringing in all our prospects, be down at Little Caesars Arena and, being around those prospects for the next 3 or 4 days is something that I enjoy doing, seeing these players, talking to these players, continue getting to know them. And then, on this year's, draft picks, just to be able to see them and welcome them, to the Detroit Red Wings. Last night, walking out, I was able to have a good conversation with Carter Bear. Obviously was still pretty emotional about being selected by the Detroit Red Wings and very excited to be a part of this organization. It was great to be able to talk to him. And then obviously bringing in everyone that we selected today, bringing those guys in and getting to see them as well. So really, that's what I have going on for, probably the next 4 or 5 days. And I got to be honest, I'm hoping by the weekend I'm up on Torch Lake. That's what I'm hoping to do after a busy scouting season, and especially over the last couple of weeks preparing and fine tuning everything for the last 2 days.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a great summer. Might see you down at LCA.
Thanks, Kris.